Hey all, Hippo here. As you know, I've found a new interest in the Tashkent destroyer, the Russian destroyer, and I've been playing around with lots of builds on this ship. And actually, the one I have maybe not settled on, but the one I'm using right now is the one I'll just go through here, and you can test it out if you want to. And yes, Makarov is actually a cruiser commander, and that's why this is probably a more exotic build, let's put it like that. Okay, first let's just go through my ship here and how I've set it up. And this build focuses on range and maneuverability. And in the first I have the main battery mod for better turret rotation. And then I have steering gears in the second. And in the third I have steering gears as well, because it's all about maneuverability and range, this build. And then I have to choose the main battery reload here. I would love to have the extra 5% range, but it's not available for some reason. HE 1900 and 8% chance for fire. AP is really good, 2500. And the torps are, yeah, pretty good. 8 kilometer range, pretty slow. And with the Makarov we get 3 speed boosts, 3 smokes, and of course damage control, but it lasts 12 seconds, not 10. And remember to put an epic battle booster on this build so you get 3% extra range. That's pretty important. So if we look at Makarov here, I have Rumble as the first inspiration for longer range on my guns, and then I have Sims to give me another 2100 HP, and Makarov's base trait increases the repair. And here you can choose between 2% extra fire or Ingenious, and I've gone with Ingenious for the minimized splash damage. And here you get the extra rudder shift, very important, very important. And you can also choose intuitive if you want to have that skill on your destroyer. And then I choose an extra speed here, and for the forward I've chosen extra rudder shift again. And of course I have chosen the extra consumables, so I get 3 of the smokes and the speed boosts, which always comes in handy. I wish I could use the EOP skill here, but unfortunately that only works for cruisers. That would have been very nice though. So I just have a quick peek at Rumble here, and he's level 15 and he gives me more than 5% extra range, which is really good. As long as you get the range over 13 kilometers, that's fine. You don't need the 14 that you can actually spec it to. 13 is fine. Now Rumble gives you just a little bit of extra range and a little bit of extra HE fire chance. But he comes with a lot of debuffs to the rudder and also to your HE damage. Of course, he comes with the unstoppable skill, and Makarov does not have that. So keep that in mind if you try this build out. You need to be very careful if you lose your engine. So always save a repair for that, or a smoke, something like that. So here's the ship stats with Makarov, and see we have 13 kilometer range, 1900 HE shield damage, and 8% fire chance, which is good. That's pretty much all we need. It's actually better than most of the other commanders, except for the fire chance. Maximum speed 45.5, and rudder shift is 1.8. The rudder shift is pretty much half of what you get with the other commanders, and this whole build here is pretty much built around that style. Now I forgot to mention that with Makarov you can choose an additional 2% fire chance over Ingenious if that's your thing. I've chosen Ingenious because that works better for me, but it's up to you, of course, what you go with. So the core of this build is pretty much that you'll be a gunboat, completely and utterly a gunboat. We don't care at all about concealment or hiding or anything like that. It's very similar to my Atago playstyle, where you stay in open water and just fire HE at the enemy while you are evasion tanking their shots, and that way giving your team a better way or a better opportunity to cap or fire back at the enemy, whatever. And if things go south, you have a smoke. You actually have 3 smokes with this build to make sure you get out of there alive, which is very, very useful. I'm not much of a smoke player, but on this build I use it a lot actually. So you can see as soon as we get someone inside 13 kilometers, we just open up, and we have like a 4 point something reload and 8% fire chance. So it's we can do some good damage if we just have some targets to shoot at. That's pretty much it. Now with this build, I don't usually enter the cap immediately or right off the bat. I kind of flank it and just have a peek at what's going on. Because, like I said, the concealment build is non-existent on this ship, so consider it a big, well, actually a very small cruiser. And as I'm a big fan of cruiser gameplay, this is probably why I have suddenly fallen in love with this ship, and I play it a lot now. It wasn't as good before Wargaming buffed it here in the last update, but after the buff, it's really, really good. I really like this ship now, and if the rumors are true, we'll get a Makarov as a new legendary destroyer. Then I'll be very happy, because then I'll have a good build to put on it, and hopefully it's similar to Tashkent, just like it is on PC. On PC, Makarov I think it has a little bit shorter range, but it has 4 turrets instead of 3, and a few other tidbits and stuff like that. It's different, but it's just a better Tashkent pretty much. So I hope that happens. Anyway, we'll see about that. So torps I use as an afterthought. They have 8 kilometer range, so they're not bad by any means. They are a little bit slow though, but that's not as slow as the Italian ones, but they're okay. And if you know what you're doing, you can get in some good hits with them, and really up your damage that way. But again, the main focus of this build is the guns and the HE damage. That's what I use all the time. So just pick a battleship, or preferably a cruiser with a little bit thinner armor, and just go crazy on the superstructure with high explosives. And the destroyers are very easy to hit as well. Like the gun ballistics on this ship are just fantastic. You can pretty much hit anything you aim at, as long as it's in range. And even if you up the range to 14 kilometers, you still have no problem hitting destroyers at your max range, which is really cool. So with this build, you are permanently spotted, pretty much, and the key is to simply shoot your guns as much as you possibly can, and avoid any return fire. That's it. And if you get the opportunity to cap or fire a few torps, you do that, but it's not the primary goal for this ship or for this build. And it doesn't really matter how you build Tashkent, it will never be a good capping destroyer. You might as well pick a completely different destroyer then, because Udachi or Kagero or Lightning or anything like that, they do a much better job at that. Tashkent is a small cruiser, and that's why it's so good at this open water HE build here that I've put on it. And like I said, I really enjoy it. I think it's a lot of fun to play. And just as with any other open water build, don't get in front of too many ships at one time. 3, perhaps 4, depending on the type. That should be the maximum. And that's also why I have the ingenious skill on, because with an open water build, I think you will need that skill to help you make like good calls and kind of interpret where the enemy ships are and which way you should turn and stuff like that. So I would go with it, but of course doesn't mean that you have to do it. So again, don't think of Tashkent as a destroyer, although it technically is one. it's a very light cruiser, and your job is to harass and annoy and tank any shell that the enemy team might fire. So, like I said before, you'll give a better chance to your team to do something useful instead of having to run and hide from Iowa shells all the time. If you stay more than 10 kilometers from any enemy, pretty much, you'll be able to wiggle your way around the shells. And with the standard builds on Tashkent, you have a really slow rudder. You have 3.5, 3.6 seconds or something like that, and that's just too much to be like efficient enough at this evasion tanking here. And that's really all the ship is good at. So you might as well spec completely into that and just ignore torpedoes, concealment, and all the other classic destroyer skills. There's no point speccing this ship into it, because if you want to do that, like I said before, there are much better options out there. Now, key to this build is not to engage with other destroyers too early, because although this Tashkent here is actually very, very good at dealing with other destroyers, just try not to get into those fights too early. Not because you can't take on another destroyer, but because it'll force you into positions that probably will get you to take fire from other ships. So see here we get like a good amount of fires, and what's happening now is a classic Tashkent game here. The Iowa knows that he cannot escape, and he keeps getting set on fire. So he'll just rush us, and in this case he's not actually focusing on me. So I can get my torps into play here. He's within 8 kilometers, and I'll just keep setting him on fire the best I can. If suddenly he would turn and aim at me, I would just smoke up and sit in my smoke until he got tired of looking at me without being able to do anything. So we don't need to do that now, but we are racking up damage nicely here. And this is what Tashkent does really well. I'm actually a little bit too close to this Iowa. It's better to stay at least 10 kilometers away. I've gotten a little excited here, but that's okay. He's not focusing on me, so I'm guessing that's why I haven't really been that careful. So we got him with a few torps there, and we just rounded 100,000 damage. So now we've thinned out the enemy team so much that we can start to cap and take on other destroyers if we get the chance. When you run into another destroyer, it's better to attack them head on. It'll make yourself a much smaller target, and it's much easier to evade torps. And you have 2/3 of your guns in front of the ship anyway, so you don't really need that last gun there. You'll be able to take them out very quickly with your HE shells. It's quite easy. Another positive thing about this build is that you'll be able to dodge torps with this fast rudder here. The standard build with the 3-point-something 4-second rudder, if you go all in on rudder on the standard build, which most people probably don't. Like, torp evasion is a really sore point for Tashkent, especially if you're sailing broadside on for some reason. Like, it's a big destroyer, so it's hard to avoid getting hit if you get a broadside of torps, especially if you don't have a fast rudder. And keep in mind that the turning radius of this destroyer is 730 meters. That's almost the same as a Targo. It's lower. Targo is 790, but it's still very, very big for a destroyer. So anything you can do to cut down on your reaction time, like buffing your rudder, is something that'll pay back in great dividends. So in the beginning of the games, like I said before, I tend to focus on cruisers and then battleships in that order. Cruisers are easier to set on fire and easier to hit with the wonderful guns on this ship. And then, if you can, save the destroyer encounters till later in the game, like now. Maybe this is actually a little bit late, but at least halfway into the game. So now I'm just rushing this destroyer here. I know roughly where he is, and I'm expecting him to smoke up at any minute now. There he is. It's an Akatsuki, and he's smoking up like I thought. See, we got some good hits in, and this HE is just it's very good and very lethal. And the reload is only 4.4 seconds, so you can really put the hurt on other destroyers with this ship. But just make sure that you don't get shot from another angle. I mean, you cannot get citadeled in this ship because it's a destroyer, but you can still get hurt a lot. So there he is, and just missed out a good shot there. I think it lagged out a little bit. So that's the cap, and he's broadside on, and his engine is out. And see, there was someone hitting me from another side, so I'll have to take care of that. And that was like unfair. I should have killed him there. But there he goes, and we can start to focus on this lightning that's been shooting me from the side over here. And you see, like I'm still at 23,000 hit points. I haven't really taken a lot of fire this game here because Tashkent seems to get ignored a lot by people. They don't really consider it a threat. Of course, that changes when it sets them on fire time after time after time, and they get annoyed, and then they tend to rush you and attack you, and then they get torqued. And that's the fun part of Tashkent. I don't really know what this guy is reversing, and yeah. Anyway, then we have a lonely battleship left, facing 2 destroyers and 2 battleships, so it's not really a fair fight. But won't complain about that. So this is a pretty good outcome, this match here. So far, I've done 120,000 damage, and I've taken 500 something damage myself. And that's pretty typical for a Tashkent game. Like, either you take lots of damage and you just get by with 1 or 2 hit points left, or you don't take any damage at all because everybody's just ignoring you. And it depends on the players, I guess. But in either way, it's fun. Like, it's a fun ship, and if you build it like this, like and you enjoy cruisers, then I'm sure you will like this build and this ship, especially after the buff. It's a lot more entertaining now. So see, we did 122. We got a high caliber, yeah, and nearly 3,000 XP and 3 kills. But yeah, most of the kills were a little bit underwhelming, but they still count. Now remember, this is not a traditional build, so if you enjoy stealth destroyers and stealth torping and all that stuff, this build is not for you, and Tashkent is probably not for you either. Like I said many times in this video, I consider it a very light cruiser, and I play it like that. So if you want to give this build a try and see if you like it, of course don't put any commendations or insignia into Makarov unless you are absolutely sure you like this build. Otherwise, stay with one of the standard commanders. This is like a high risk, high reward build, so it's not for everyone, that's for sure. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this, and hip out, and I'll probably see you on the battlefield.